All right. So triggers, what are they and how do they work? The trigger system that we are building in LockedOn is a way for us to automate DNA plans and actions to happen for your data when an event occurs in the system. So an event may be that someone appears at your inspections, someone makes an inquiry on a property, you change a status from potential to listed, you change a property from listed to sold. These are all events of data changing in the system. In the prior system of LockedOn, if you'd made a change to a particular record or if you had updated something, you would then need to action all the things to follow that. So you may need to set a DNA plan that will then send a few emails and letters off to your clients. Now with the trigger system, we're starting to now move away from having to rely on people to remember what actions or data needs to be updated when something occurs in the database. What you will eventually see in your account coming up very soon is in the engine, you will have a new module called triggers. The first 4 that you will have will be the 4 that we're going to demonstrate and show today. Now, the first one is the inquiry response. And this is something that you already have available to you in your system, although it will be moved into a trigger. And the inquiry response is a way of saying, if we get an inquiry, whether that be from a website, REA domain, your website, and it's captured into LockedOn, or if you put an inquiry in, then we want to trigger certain actions as a part of a DNA plan. That could be send an SMS, send an email. A whole lot of other actions can be included inside of that. But the first one is our inquiry response. The next one is the birthday, and this is a little bit different to the rest of them on the list, and it's just another way for you to see how triggers can work. Birthdays trigger is a way of scanning the database every morning at a set time to say, what contacts do I have that have a birthday today? And based on the results that I find, we want to perform this DNA to those set of clients. Again, that DNA can have anything you want in it, but it could be send an SMS and send an email. It could even be to book in a phone call. The items of your DNA are built in the engine DNA section and can have as many different tasks as you want in them. And we'll look at the birthday ones and the property and test email ones we've done. Now, the property inspection one is one of the newer ones. So inquiry response, we kind of already have. Birthdays is a different way of doing triggers based on it scanning the database each morning. But the property inspections and the test email click, or the email click one, are 2 really, really cool ones that we've added in that will be a part of the pack that you'll get. So a property inspection one now will actually allow us to say, if an inspection comes into the database, whether that be from HomePass, whether you're manually putting them in, and the inspection time has passed, so you can book these in the future and they don't actually send until the inspection time's passed, then activate the DNA plan from that. So let's look at that at a world of inspections. You're at an open home, you're doing an inspection and 10 clients walk through your open home. Suddenly, each client will then have a DNA plan set against them to automatically send whatever's in that plan. So we would look at sending an SMS that says, thank you for coming to the inspection. We could then delay an email to be sent 4 hours after, which says, you attended this inspection today. Here is all the details of the property. We will call you Monday. And then you could actually set a phone call for you to speak to that person on the Monday. From that, you could have another phone call in 3 months, another one in 6 months, and then a reoccurring SMS or email to them every couple of months to see if they're still looking. But now that we can action certain events and use the power of DNA, we're monitoring what happens in the system and setting some really cool DNA plans with actions around every event. Now, the test click button here, we'll probably label that differently, but it's just an actual called button click, but we've called it test as we were testing it. The button click is for all your email marketing. Now, this one's going to be a very highly used trigger that you will actually probably duplicate and create many of the same. But what we actually can do here is from an email is set for a button that if it gets clicked to activate a DNA plan against a client. How does this work in the real estate world? Well, if you're sending out an email to your whole database, let's call it your monthly newsletter, and at the bottom of that, you have a button that says, click here if you're thinking of selling. This is just a very basic example. Now, when the person clicks that, we can then track that in the system, set a DNA plan against them to automatically send them an SMS saying an agent will be in contact with you within the next 10 minutes. We can then delay an email with a whole lot of information on selling your home. We can then schedule a call in for that day for the agent to call that person that's clicked the button. So that's just one example, but you can build any DNA plan and set it against any button so that actions happen if anyone clicks that. So if we look into the triggers, we are actually going to have them installed on your account with the DNA plans and the templates set up, and it'll be a matter of you just customizing how you want them to work in your office. Let's look at the DNA because it's something that's really important to how triggers work, and we're going to look at the test click one. If I go into the engine and into the DNA plans, we have built a plan in here called test button click. And inside that plan, we have an SMS that will be sent immediately to the person who clicks it. We have an email that is delayed 15 minutes, and then I have a phone call due for the agent 1 day after. If you're familiar with the DNA, you will know that you can drag any item into here and build a very complex DNA plan that has a series of actions in it, due at any date or time and repeating tasks. The power of the DNA is really what makes the trigger system very, very powerful. If you look at any SMS or email by going into the edit option, you'll be able to see that in the template area, you can automate any email or SMS by ticking this button. So in a lot of the triggers that we'll be building and releasing, there's going to be a lot of automation with the SMSs and emails. We really don't want them showing up in your task and for you to do them. It's just going to be immediate actions. But at any point you didn't want things to happen automatically, you can turn them off. So if we're looking at an email click, a live example of this is we'll go into my client. We can see that we have my details here, and we will hit the send email option. Pretend this is a bulk email going out to hundreds of people. And on that email template, you've got a nice little button at the bottom that says thinking of selling. We can then, what do we got here? Buy a match. Trigger button. Okay, so we called it trigger button. This is just my template. We'll label them a lot better for you. But here we can see is a very standard email that says click the button to set a DNA plan, which will set multiple actions, SMS, email, and phone call. So this email is purely just for testing today. Imagine a newsletter's been sent with a button here that says sell your home for more, or have you sold your home, or thinking of selling, and a series of actions happen from that. We're going to send this email off knowing that this button is set up to apply the DNA plan. We'll hit the send option, and whilst that is sending to me, we'll go and have a look at the email template and how that's built. So first step would be your DNA plan is created. So what items do you want to happen when the button is clicked? If we go into the template now and we look at the trigger template, we can see that when I'm building the template, I have a button, and when we're setting up the button, we can give it a label, we can direct it to a URL, which I'm just going to Google, and we then select what trigger it will be using. I've got the test email button click trigger, and I know that that trigger is setting a DNA plan that I built. So if we hit the save option, that is now set up to apply that trigger. If we go back into the engine triggers area, which you will all have in your account soon, you will see how many times the trigger has been applied. And this is really important. The trigger system is going to be a separate module where you'll have a free account which gives you X amount of trigger applies. If you're a big account and you're using a lot of triggers, and you'll be able to create as many triggers as you want, but it will all be based on how many triggers get applied each month to how much this costs. The packages will be released soon, but the free package will be enough to get everyone to create all their standard triggers and use these for a long time before you'll go into the paid schedule. So looking at this now, we've got this trigger has been applied 3 times. Now, if you sent a bulk email to 1,000 people and 50 people clicked it, that would go up to 53. So if we look into my inbox now and we hit the refresh option, okay. Inbox. Sorry, just going to wait for this to come through. On my client. Okay, so we have the email pending, so I can see it in there as the history is pending. Let me just check if it's going through here. I'm just looking into the email history. Okay, and what we can see here is we have the sent successfully now. So I know that that's been sent now, and we can see it in my inbox test button. So the email has arrived. We can open up the particular email, and we have the actual button here. Now, when the button gets clicked, it directs the user to whatever URL, and I've directed it just to Google. So that could take them to your landing page, a property, whatever you want, it's specified on the button. If we go back into my client now, we will be able to see that in the tasks area, if we refresh here, just collecting the data and sending it back to the server. So we'll then see the plan apply, which will automatically send me the SMS, and then the email will be delayed and a phone call will be set. If we look into the engine, into the triggers, and we view them, so the action hasn't been applied yet. So it's tracked the click, but it hasn't applied the action against my client. So we'll see that happen soon, and I'll get the SMS on my phone and we'll be able to come back and view that against my particular record. So the other triggers that we'll be giving you will be the inspections and the inquiries. So basically, if an inquiry comes in, which is captured into your inquiry section, it will act very similar to what you have now, where the email will be sent or an SMS based on what you want, but you'll be able to build that in your plan and have a delay SMS or email on it. That will mean that you can send an SMS instantly and delay your email to be maybe a day after the follow-up, or have an email to go instantly and then another email to go in a week to your client when inquiries happen. So you'll be able to build some really cool SMS and email follow-up campaigns around every inquiry that happens in your system. As they come in, they will be sent off to the client's email or mobile. And again, you'll be able to track that against your particular client by seeing it in the history and in the task section. See that there. So here is the click button, and you can see that it set the DNA test button clicked. So the system's now registered that Luke Newton clicked the email, and it's got a blank template that is set to be sent, and then a blank email, and then a phone call. In its raw basics, this is what your plans will contain: emails, SMSs, and calls to important people that click important buttons. Again, to think of it more advanced, if you had an email that then had a second button in it, you can then trigger another plan. And that's where it really gets to the advanced level of building plans, the action plans, the action plans, so that people may not get a phone call registered until they've clicked the third button in the third plan, which means that they are very hot, ready to sell. So that's kind of taking it to the advanced level, but the basic level is that you can build a plan around any click. So this has been triggered. We can actually see that in the completed area now, my SMS that was automatic has been sent. The email is due to go. I think we had a 15-minute delay on that. So it's at 2:27. The time now is 2:14. And then the phone call is being booked in a day for tomorrow. So if we check my tasks, we would see that tomorrow there is an action appearing from the clicked button phone call. So that is the trigger, which is the button click. It's endless to what you can do, what buttons you can set it on. The other thing we will be doing with the button clicks is we will not be limiting it to just buttons. You will be able to, in your template, if you're building a template, set a trigger to happen on an image. So if you had an image, a really nice picture, or you had 2 or 3 images there, and any one of them was clicked, it will also have the ability for you to set a trigger, which is a DNA based on what has been clicked. So if we just had a certain one like this, it was a house, we can then make that trigger some follow-up SMSs and automation. Okay, so that's the email trigger that we've launched. Now, if we look at the inspection trigger, when you go into a client, this will be mainly from everyone using HomePass. And the plan that you'll do will allow you to give really, really great follow-up to anyone who comes to your inspections. Most of the people we've spoken to in LockedOn have a similar pattern, which is do the open for inspections, data gets synced into the system, that afternoon send an SMS thanking them that they've come through, and they do that in bulk. Now, this will eliminate that whole purpose of coming back to the office, seeing who inspected and sending off the SMS. If we can delay the SMS and we can set a plan against every person, we then can build this into a routine that if an inspection happens, then set this automatically. Now, let's just pretend I'm using HomePass and we'll go into a particular property here that I've got for sale, 8 Skinners. What HomePass would do is sync the data directly into the inspections area. Now, if I add this manually by going add inspection, we can see that we're going to add it for Luke Newton, and the date and time, we're going to put it in today at 2, and we'll make it to 15 because we've just passed that, 1-5. Oops. It's to 2:15 p.m. and it took 20 minutes, and we can fill in all the rest of the details here, feedback, etc. As we add that, the system knows that that date and time has passed, and it is going to action the automatic thank you for inspecting the property email, and also the thank you for inspecting SMS. Again, we'll take a little bit for the system to scan and pick that up, but if we go into our client and we look into the history, this is where you'll be able to see that the action has been sent. Okay, so once that trigger has picked it up, that's done, it will then say the email for thank you for inspecting, which is one that we did before, and I see that I've opened it, has been sent, and the SMS has been sent as well in the SMS option for history. Now, if we look into the inbox, S button, click there, and we'll do the refresh option. Just a little bit of a delay, there's the reminders, and that SMS and email will be sent off to me very shortly about that particular property. So we'll go back into the property 8 Skinners, and we'll then load the inspection area. Okay, there's my inspection at the top. So what you will see on the property is a history of what's actually been actioned. So we have the email sent after inspection, thank you. We have the date and time for the inspection by Luke and details there. And hopefully by now we can sort of see that the inbox is coming up. I still haven't sent off, but we will get that email saying thank you for inspecting. And then I've delayed the SMS there. There's the one that we prior before. Thank you for inspecting. And that would come through instantly to someone who's come through your property in an open or private, and they'll have full details of that particular property. Depending on how you set up your template, you can have things in there like links to brochures, documents, all the information about the property after they've inspected it. Okay, now if we're looking at the other triggers that we have in here, so we've looked at the click, the property inspections, let's look at the birthday one. Now the birthday one is quite simple. If we're going into my record and we open that up against each contact, you'll be able to go into the edit option and enter their date of birth. Now the system will every morning scan for all your clients that have a birthday due today. If we look at one thing in your settings, which is in the office settings, in the settings area, and all the admins will have this access, you'll then be able to go into the default automation start time here in the office settings. And this start time is basically a time that we pick up on your system that you want automatic emails and SMSs to start sending. Anything before this time will be paused and will send at 10:30 a.m. Now, if you plus 9 hours onto that, so 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:35, 36, 7:30, it will then stop sending after 7:30 p.m. And anything that falls after 7:30 will be paused and will send at your start time the next morning. So for birthdays, what we actually do is we scan early in the morning. We then get a list of all the people that have a birthday today, and then we wait till your start time and we will send them your birthday trigger. Now, if we go back into the engine in the triggers and look at the birthday one you've set up, it tells us that you're selecting the DNA to apply, which is the happy birthday. And again, we'll put this into your system. You'll be able to edit the content of it. Now, in the engine DNAs, we have one called happy birthday. If we look at the actions of this plan, right now, all I have is an email that will send off to the client saying happy birthday. If we look at the edit and the template, it's automated. So this will now happen every day for any client you have a birthday, and it will then repeat until you remove their birthday off that particular client every year. So you can see that this is a very powerful little DNA plan that has one action in it. But for the clients that we were testing in the offices, they've actually got some really nice DNA plans built around email, SMS, and then a phone call to the client. So you can do things like schedule a nice letter saying, we know it was your birthday recently, here's a gift voucher or a scratchy. So all those things can be embedded into your DNA plan, and you can have a lot more actions than just the one automatic SMS and email that we have in ours right now. So again, we'll bring up my record and we'll be able to see that here in the history, we have a summary of everything happening. Now, if the birthday one had been sent, which we can't do because it does it in the morning, we could change my birthday to tomorrow morning and we'll be able to receive that. Now, if we look in the inbox here, we refresh that. We have the thank you for inspection template that's been sent, and in the history, there's the pending. So we have that in the system, pending to be sent, and that is the inspection that I completed before. Okay, now back into the engine, into our triggers. We've got the inquiry response that happens from all inquiries coming in, our birthdays, inspections, and test email click. What I want to show you here is that you can see that's been applied, the test email click. So that went from 3 to 4. Our property inspections went up as well as we added the inspection in. Now the birthday one hasn't been actioned in my account, but the inquiry response one you can see has happened 10 times. These will be numbers that you'll then have a total at the top of your screen, which tells you how many triggers have been actioned for you in your account each month. So hopefully that gives you some good insight into the triggers. Now the trigger system itself, we will be embedding the triggers into your account. It will then be up to you to modify the standard templates that we give you and add on to the DNA plans that come with those triggers. Each week we have a goal to be increasing and adding more and more triggers to your account. We have seriously probably about 30 or 40 in the pipeline to be made that will be installed. Once we've built and tested them, we then create tutorial movies on how each trigger actions, and then you'll be able to modify the content of the DNA plans that we give you as standard and make them as advanced as you would like. So for showing the trigger system, was there any questions that we had? If you had questions around triggers or how they work, we'll get you to use the Q&A option of the question section now, and we can answer some of those questions around triggers live now and then finish off the rest of the session based on the standard things we would go over on our webinar in the last 30 minutes. In your Zoom meeting control panel, you should have the question option or the chat option we can see come through as well. Look, there's the thank you for inspecting email, which was taking a while to send, but we can see that that's come through now. And the SMS has been sent through to my phone, which says thank you for inspecting as well, which was a bit of a delay on that template. Okay, so just reviewing the question, it's coming now. Okay, someone asking when will these triggers be available? So the first 4 triggers that we're talking about, we are hoping to install on everyone's account late this week, early next week. Once the templates have all been finalized, the system will be put into your account and those 4 triggers will be available to you to start using straight away. We will then be releasing, as I said, more and more triggers as we build and test. At the moment, you won't be able to build your own triggers in the system, but we are open to collecting ideas, and we have a really good board of ideas from users at the moment on what triggers they would like to see. So remember, triggers can be anything that happens in the account. If you say someone changes a property from listed to under offer, what do you want to happen from there? Send through your suggestions. We'll document those and put them on the board, and we will try and get as many out in a week as we can, as we really want everyone to be automating as much as they can through their system with LockedOn and the trigger system. So a good question here is, what happens if someone attends 2 open homes on the same day? Will they get 2 texts or emails? Yes, they will. The ability for that is that you're saying thank you for coming to this particular property, and the email is about that specific property. So yes, they will get an SMS instantly after they attend one, and then maybe 2 hours later they'll attend another one, and they will get an SMS instantly with that address and an email with all the info of that property. They're not standard SMSs or emails. They are specific to the property they attended. So if they attend 5 with you, there'll be 5 emails to them and 5 SMSs. When you go live with triggers, will videos be available simultaneously? Yes, we will have training videos around each trigger that is launched, teaching you how to use it and how to customize. Okay, will they get 2 DNAs applied if they have 2 open homes? Yes, they do, because the DNAs are specific to the property. So it doesn't matter whether they have 2 or not, it's 2 DNAs applied against them with 2 different SMSs and 2 different emails. All right, so that looks like all of the questions there. I did want to get through triggers at the start, guys, for everyone that was a more advanced LockedOn user that has done our monthly webinars before. Hopefully you've seen enough there to sort of spark your interest and ready to get into it as soon as we launch these. As soon as we do launch, we will put up a system message at the top of the screen, letting you know that the 4 standard triggers have been implemented, and you'll be able to go to them and also go to the YouTube channel to watch how each one of them works. So I look forward to launching to them, getting your feedback, and then implementing more and more triggers to automate your LockedOn experience. So for the people that have done the webinar before and gone over the basics, thanks for your time looking at the trigger system. For the rest of the people, we'll get underway with the standard LockedOn webinar, which will go through the clients and buyer cycles with our data now. Okay, so now that we've sort of covered off on the triggers, let's look at the basics of what we do with LockedOn. So in our normal webinar, we cover off on how to work with buyers and how to work with sellers. And these are the 2 obviously primary people you're dealing with in real estate. So let's get into the buyers first. We'll then have a break and see if there's any questions. And then the last sort of 10, 15 minutes, we will then look at the sellers and the DNA plans and the vendor reporting. First of all, when you're working with buyers, we get lots of different ways they can enter the system, whether that be through HomePass, whether it be through realestate.com, your websites, inquiries, or you're putting them directly into the system as a new client. If we go into the inquiry section, what we're finding is that majority of clients you have, if you're capturing leads from REA and Domain, buyers generally enter this way. So when we have a client that's come from REA or Domain, it will be captured into the inquiry section. If we're using the triggers, we will see an email or SMS that will be actioned to them instantly. So they're getting great communication from your office with beautiful email and an SMS instantly. Now, if we want to process someone, so we may have called Andrew out on the road, or we want to add them as a new client, we hit the process option and it will add the agent's name that's processing it, and you'll then be able to add that client into the system. Now, what that is actually doing, the process button, is checking that they don't exist. Now, if they already exist, it's going to open up an existing client. If it's a new client, it will then also create a new record, open you up on the buyer screen, and you'll need to fill in your buyer criteria based on the chat you've had with them. So the first people we're going to look at is, how do we add buyers into the system? As I said, majority of them will come through the inquiries and the process section. But if you want to add them into your account as a manual one, you can go to the actions in clients and hit add client and fill in the details of your buyer and then hit add. That will then give you the same screen we were on before. By going into your record, in the information, you'll have the buyer criteria. So working with buyers is really about getting criteria and making sure that if we have good criteria, we can do great things with that, matching buyers to listings and sending the appropriate properties to the right people. So inside our buyer criteria, you can see my test record has a price up to 2.5 and that's all. And if we save that criteria, we then have a button here that says click here to view matching properties. So the system will automatically match all the properties that we have. Right now I have quite a few properties here that are matching, but if I was to change my criteria and be more accurate with what this person's looking for, it will probably make this list shorter. So in the information buyer criteria, if we start saying, well, look, I definitely need 4 bedrooms, large family, and we click the matches again, we can see that we're getting, a result here that will update if I hit the save option. To the information, buyer criteria, bedrooms 2.5, to change the pricing there. Okay, seems to be, it's not picking up the buyer beds that I'm putting in, so I'll need to look at that. If we put it down to 3, 333, 444. Okay, so it's matching over the beds there that we have. So if we put in 4 beds, it really should be dropping off anything that's 3 bedrooms, as that criteria is specified to do that. Now I know they were doing some testing with some buyer settings on my account, so I'm just going to disable this case that they were doing, and I reckon that's exactly what that was. So I'll go into my record again, and let's change the criteria. So in the information buyer criteria, we're going to say 4 bedrooms. The more data you put in, the smaller your results should get. And there we go. So as we can see, the results shrink the more data you put in, but this allows you to have more accurate buyer matching. So when you're going to listing presentations or you're doing a just listed ad, you can say we have exactly X amount of buyers that are looking for your property. We can also match on appraisal. So Luke, with really specific criteria, we can see I have 1 future appraisal that matches them, which is a really good thing for you to prompt and say, okay, well, here's a property that I can call, see if they're thinking of selling because I have the perfect buyer for them. So you don't just match stock you have, you can match the future stock, which will prompt you for phone calls. But when you actually do have the stock that matches your buyer, one of the things we want to teach you is how to use the buyer match. So if we use the send email option, one of your standard templates will be called buyer match. And the buyer match template will then allow you to send off a list of properties that you have with a nice branding, logos, and details to your buyer by hitting the send option. So the buyer's been captured, you have their details in the system. If we look at the information tab, this is where you add all your categories to a new client. You'll be able to select your lead source, flag them as a potential seller, which we'll come back to in the second part of this, add any important details, any tags you want. All of the tags in LockedOn version 2 are in one area. So you simply select the ones that you need here and communication list and hit save. So the general tab is all of your tagging. The contacts tab is where you can have husband and wife and add more people if needed and all of their own contact settings. And if you want to redrag the order, you can click and drop, which means that Nat is now the primary person, and we'll change it back to Luke. A good thing to remember here is that you only need the address on the top primary person. That will also remove this bottom one below. Okay, the buyer criteria, an advancement with LockedOn version 2 is that we can have multiple criterias. So that is my dream house, but if I was also looking for an investment property, I can put here investment. Oops. And we can then change the property type to apartment. So I'm actually looking for an apartment that is up to 700,000. Based on that, it will match my dream house criteria and my investment. And I don't think I'll have any properties there that are an apartment, but it will then show me those matches. So it's a new thing that you now have the ability to create more than one buyer criteria against each buyer. That will then show you the matches in the properties, listing matches, or any appraisals that then match your client. Oh, there we go. So one appraisal did appear there. Sorry, there's the apartment. Okay, now on the flip side of when you get really nice buyers added into the system, if we go to a listing, what you'll be able to see is the buyer match tab under any property that you've just listed. Now, this will show you the matching buyers. Now, looking at the list of matching buyers, I have 6, and you can see my name is on that list. You have many things you can do. It really will depend on how big your list is. So if your list is small, you may want to call them. And to call through a list, you can go actions, create hit list. This will give me a list of all the buyers, which I can then actions view summary on the first person, and I have all their details on the screen. I can see Andrew doesn't have a mobile number or a contact number, so I may not call him and I'll go to the next person. Aaron and Verity, I have a number. I call them, I speak to them about the new listing. I then go to the next person, I call them and speak to them about the new listing. So we can see the hit list function will turn LockedOn into a really powerful telemarketing system that you can go from one record to the next really easily. If we go back into the property and we again look at the buyer match list, you'll also have the options to go send and bulk communicate through SMS, email, or letter. If you are going to launch your property and do an email, you can use our standard template in the system, which we give all users called Just Listed, and it will then load your logos, branding, and details with a nice formatted email that you can send off with all of the marketing, listing agents' details, and hit the send option. When you send off a Just Listed, generally the email is going to a large set of people, and you then will have the ability to track it in the reports in the emails section by going into the last one you've sent and looking at the details. You will see all of the open rates, unsubscribed, bounces, and who clicked on it. So make use of your email statistics, because Just Listed alerts, if you can start to track who clicks on your property, there's a really good list of people that you should be calling. Okay, so you can see I've only had one click on the test one that we've done in the system, but if there was 10, there'd be 10 people there that I should be calling about the property we just listed. So that's in your reports, emails. Use your email stats to your advantage, especially when working buyers. Now back onto our listed properties, when you're starting to work with buyers, you'll have the ability to start adding activity against them, and the activity reflects against the listing in these 4 tabs. We can track every inquiry. Now they're getting auto capture from REA domain as well. We can track every inspection. If you're using HomePass, these are feeding in automatically. And anytime that someone requests a contract or makes an offer, you add that against their record. So if I go back to the buyer, when you're working with buyers and you want to add activity against them, and there's 4 levels of activity: inquiries, inspection, contract, or offers, you can use the action button and add any one of them against them. So if you did an inspection with Luke and Nat and you didn't have HomePass and you want to add it manually, you can do that. If you had an inquiry or you called your client and want to log that you spoke to them about a property, you can add an inquiry. And the same with contracts and offers. They're 2 things that you generally add manually against your buyer. So they requested a contract, what property, what date, any notes, and they also made an offer. What date, how much was offered, any notes, and was it accepted? Now all of that, as I said, feeds back into the listing, into the activity tab that we see here. So once you start to get a really good pool of buyers, you'll have really good buyer match, just listed alerts going out. The second phase is that you need to communicate with buyers during the campaign that have interest in that property. So this campaign, we'll pretend that it's near the end. We've got an auction coming up. We've had 5 inquiries. We've had 31 inspections. You can see how many contracts and offers. Now the auction's tomorrow, and I want to communicate with all of these parties. So we can use the send, SMS, email, or letter. Now an SMS is really good to use throughout communication of the campaign because it's direct, it's fast, and it's very cheap. But the 4 inquiries are there, but I want to add in all my inspections. I want to add in anyone who's taken a contract and anyone who has made an offer, and we end up with 11 people. I can then choose my template, which will be auction tomorrow, and we can then update the preview to see an example of this. It's going to use all the merge tags to create the SMS, and then we have the ability to send that now, or delayed sending. I could send that 1 day or 1 hour before the auction. But send now is your typical 11 people sending straight away to your client. Send later is a way to schedule all SMSs and emails, bulk ones you're doing, to them to happen at a certain date and time. So if I knew the auction was tomorrow, I could schedule this in on the 6th, and we could do that at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So everyone who was registered or had interest in that property would get an auction reminder at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Okay, so that's why it's important to track buyers and their activity, because you want to be able to use it throughout your campaign. And it also is a big part of your vendor reports that will show. Now, if we go back into the clients and we look for my record, Here's the last thing we'll do with buyers is when we're looking at Luke and Nat, if you want to follow up buyers, our suggestion is that you always add a task and you base that task off its repeating functions on how hot, warm, or cold you think that person is. So if you're speaking with Luke and Nat and they said, look, we're financed, we're ready to go, we want to find a property ASAP, that kind of identifies them as hot. Now, everyone has their own gauge of hot, warm, or cold, but how do you follow up that person on a consistent basis? You don't need to do this for every buyer, and if you did it for every buyer, your task list would be out of control. But remember, the buyers on your system should be getting nice weekly alerts. They should be getting just listed alerts for every property that matches them. And they should also be getting updates for any property they've inquired on through SMS, whether it's sold, whether it's going to auction, whether the price being reduced. So for a buyer gets a lot of contacts through bulk in your system, but the important ones that you promise you will speak to, you take advantage of our new actions create task, the repeating function in it. So if I do the actions create task, I'm going to select phone call, and the date I want to complete that is on the 12th. So I said to Luke and Nat, look, I'll keep you up to date weekly because we do get a lot of stock and a lot of things are happening in the area, but I know you're ready to go and you want to buy something ASAP. If we just do 0, so it means that we're actioning this task on the 12th, it's not going to repeat. We can just put in there hot buyer, and if we hit the add, it's a one-off call for me to call them next week, and that's it. But with the repeating functions, I can actually say, well, look, every hot buyer, I've told them I'm going to call them every 1 week. And I don't want it to happen forever, but I said I'd keep them up to date weekly for 3 months. Okay. And then I add that task. What this will do is in the task section, it has the phone call repeat every week 12 times. If we look into my tasks, we can see that next week on the 12th, there is my due call. When I hit the complete option for any email, SMS, phone call, it will then show you a preview of what you've got to do. So that phone call, if it's an email, it will show you the email. If it's an SMS, it will show you the SMS. You'll see that I have all of the details of the clients, their important notes, their tags, and all the past notes I've written. So as I speak to the client, I can take new notes and then I can complete the call. Now that that call is completed, it will automatically set the next call for that buyer. This is important, guys, because it can be used for buyers or sellers, and it is very, very bulletproof follow-up if you do repeating calls against people. But every completing call that gets completed that has repetition on it, the server will scan and then book the next call in as soon as you complete that. So we can see the repeating call is there in the task section very soon. It will automatically pop up with my next one due in a week, once it has gone through and scanned that particular task has been completed and it knows it's repeating. So in a week's time, the same call will come up and it will actually say you've got this due only 11 times now. The next time you do it, it will say 10. It will actually count down how many times you've got left on that. Okay, so repeating, really, really powerful for buyers using the actions create task. It is the only way we really train to follow up buyers that we know is effective. When you start getting into DNA plans and building a whole lot of follow-up around buyers, because you meet so many of them, your tasks become overwhelming very quickly. And the main thing we want your task for is to see the power of the follow-up through the property life cycle, because all the money is made when we list properties and sell them. And that's where we've got to really meet people that own properties and know our plan cycle and follow-up plans to that. Okay, so we'll just reload here and we'll have a look in our task section. We can see there's the phone call I completed, and then there's the next one, and it tells me I only have 11 calls left. So looking at the buyers, you can see it's quite important to get nice, clean data. And as I've said before, buyers, they will influx your database. If you're collecting leads from REA and Domain, you're using HomePass, your buyer database can grow quickly. The biggest advice around that is make sure on a regular basis you are doing great bulk communication out to your buyers, and maybe once every 3 months you might want to send an SMS or an email, which is just quite simply, are you still looking to buy? Okay, buyers can unsubscribe from emails automatically, but it's a great thing to do is quarterly check in with them and a bulk communicate to all your buyers, are you still in the market? And that's a way that you can keep your buyer list nice and clean. But the starting point is that you have good criteria. And if you have great criteria going in for every buyer you meet, you will get tremendous results out of the LockedOn email bulk communication system for bulk marketing to your buyers on a regular basis. So before we look at the last 15 minutes on the property side of it, I'll just see if you have any questions on the buyer, adding them into the system, processing inquiries, setting your follow-up plans, and how they match to properties, and how you can do your just listed. Is there any questions we had around that particular process with our buyers? I'll give you 30 seconds to write those. If we don't see any come through, we'll get on to the next part of the properties and the DNA plans. Okay, so good question. If a buy isn't processed, is there still a record created? So if you leave the buyer in the inquiry area, they stay here. They are still linked to the property. And if we look at the property in the activity, you'll see an orange alert. Now, an orange alert means this person is not a real client. They're not in your system as a client, but they need to be processed. You can process them from the property itself or from the inquiry section. So yes, the buyers are still attached to the property. They're still there to show that you've had inquiries. But generally how this system is meant to be used is that you come into inquiries every day and you deal with the buyer inquiries you had for that day. Come a Monday, you would deal with all your buyer inquiries you had over the weekend. So best you try and stay on top of that and don't let the inquiries database build up, because you will have to catch up on that. Okay, so a question about requirements. Just confirming that buyer requirements like beds, bath and car are minimum and will include properties with greater than required in the matching properties. Great question. It is a minimum. So all of the buyers that you put into the system, when you're adding them in, you will see that it's beds, bath and car, and it's a minimum on that requirement. So before I turned off that setting that the guys were testing with, we didn't see it changing. But as soon as we go into Luke's information buyer criteria and we change my dream house from 4 down to 2, it's basically saying any property that's 2 bedrooms or more in the one up to 1.5, and it will then give me a list of those matches. So we can now see that there's more. There's a 2 bedroom there, 3 bedroom. So yes, it's all minimum requirements. Okay, if they went to a second inspection an hour after, would you be able to access their details or have to re-input? If someone's come to a property or they've made 2 inquiries, you don't have to add people twice. The system knows they're already in there. It will add all the information to the existing person because it's going to match on their mobile or email. And it's all doing all the duplicate checks for you. So no need to put people in twice. If they've come to a property of yours or inquired on a price, the system knows how to handle all of that. So yeah, if they make an inquiry today or an inquiry tomorrow, it will not duplicate them. Okay, if a person comes through HomePass and only gives a mobile and do REA remail with only email, will it match the buyer name? No, it doesn't. So we only match on email and mobile. Names we cannot match on. So if you have a HomePass person gives you a mobile, they get added to the system with that mobile. If they then make an inquiry with REA and they only give you an email, then that's going to create a separate one with an email. Now, through your working with the people, you'll eventually realize, this person's in the system twice. So if we notice they're in the system twice, what we actually do is we say, look, Luke and Nat already in the system, and I don't have a mobile for them, but this other person does. You can use the actions merge client, and you can merge them into another one of your clients by searching their name, merging the records. It then makes them one record. So that's how you keep on top of those little circumstances where you may be dealing with someone with just an email. They then give you a mobile at another point of contact. You've got 2 separate records. You can merge them together. Okay, so we'll just stop on the questions there for buyers and look at the last sort of 10 minutes here on the potential seller side. So when you're working with buyers in your database, everyone goes in as a client, but ideally the most important clients we can get are people that have properties to sell. So to flag someone that has a property to sell, it might be just a lead you've got. It could be an appraisal, it could be a past seller. But looking at their record, this is really one of the most crucial tags or ticks that you can do on someone, is this potential seller. What that means is that you know them, they know you, and they own a property in your area. Now, by turning this on and saving it, which this was already on for Luke, if we look at your dashboard stats and refresh it, it tells you how many potential sellers you have. Now, the 20 is how many are under my name because I'm an admin user, and the 23 is how many is in the whole account. So if you're admin, you generally see 2 different numbers. Even if you're an agent user, you might have access to other records that aren't yours. because we allow that in LockedOn version 2. So the 20 is your number, the larger number. So I have 20 potential sellers. You want to grow that number. You want to see it at like 7, 8, 900 really for any individual agent. Now, with these potential sellers, we'll see my record in this list, and we're going to go into my record. And when you tick someone as a potential seller, you want to attach the property they own. Now, in the properties area, in the vendor section, we can see we have one listed for Luke and one exchanged. If you need to add another property to your client, so we want to know what properties they own, you hit Actions, Link Property. You'll be able to add a new one or add from postal address. Now, my postal address is 56 Malua. Let's just say I own number 62, and that is a house. We are now attaching another property against our client. If I go back into Luke's record and he was to ring into the office, we can see that he is a potential seller, and we can see what properties he has in the pipeline, what he has listed with us, or what he may have sold with us based on their statuses. Now, 56 Ballura is the new one we've created. Now, with LockedOn, we give you a full suite of templates, DNA plans, SMSs, emails that allow you to build a great relationship with someone who has a property in your area, from meeting them as a potential to an appraisal to a listing to a sale, and all of your anniversary plans. This is all really based around updating the status from potential to appraised, then to listed, then to exchanged or unconditional, however you call that, and then to settled. So that's the property life cycle, the 5 core areas of it. Here's where LockedOn has some really good bonus points for you, is that each one of those stages, we give you DNA plans that are preset in the system. Here's where triggers will really help that, is that when you actually go into update status and you change it from a potential to an appraisal, we can make it automatically set the DNA plan and do your follow-up automatically. That's where the next triggers will be launching, will be coming around, changing statuses and things changing in the database. So that's exactly what triggers is, but it's not in the first 4 that we've built. So right now, the concept is that you've got to meet people, you've got to add their property, and you have to know what stage they're at and set the appropriate plan. I'll just change this one back to potential because it's just a brand new lead. But if we know it's a potential, we can go into the Actions Apply DNA. In here, you'll see all of the standard DNA plans that come with LockedOn, and they're all numbered in a sequential order, so you know what one to set when. So if it's a potential, I set a potential appraisal plan. I haven't appraised it, I'm trying to get into it. If I've appraised it, I set the appraisal one. If I lose that appraisal, we have a lost listing plan. If we list it, we set the awaiting contracts or new listing plan. When we actually send it live, we set our vendor management gone live plan. Okay, if we have to reduce the price or if it comes offline, we set those plans. When we actually sell the property, so the exchange has happened, the sold sign goes up, we have a plan to communicate with the vendor that we set on the exchange or unconditional date, and one to set with the purchaser, which is all the selling agents follow up for the purchaser and the purchaser solicitor. At the point of it becoming settled, we then set our anniversary plans and transfer the property. Okay, and that's using 6.1, 2, and 3. They're the big ones, the most important ones that have the automation, the anniversary, SMS every year, and email and phone call. Okay, they're really, really powerful with a lot of reoccurring, great templates in them. Now, hopefully you can see that that's a lot of work and a lot of effort. I've really only met a handful of people that have built their own plans that are as detailed as ours. If you don't have the time, or the patience to go out and research and build all of that stuff, you simply use our plans based on each property life cycle. The main rule is that if you're moving from one property status to another, you're generally setting a plan and removing a plan at the same time. Again, the triggers will handle a lot of this as automation soon, but I'm going to walk through a potential to an appraisal, and it's the same process if you're going from an appraisal to a listing. I've met a potential today, and I apply the DNA plan, which is number 1. This then sets all of the actions inside our standard DNA plan to build a relationship with your client to get to the point of doing appraisal. Now, this will be mainly for your listing agent, your agent who's working with the person. So they'll check their tasks every day and they will see that they have an intro pack. Tomorrow, they'll have more items to do to follow up that person. Okay, an email, which they hit complete to. We'll load our template, have everything merged, ready to go to your client with your branding, etc. So everything's pre-written and done. Okay, SMSs are all pre-written. They'll come up on the screen. Now, if you've set a potential, which I had an automated SMS, which just sent, if you set a potential and you then appraise the property, here's the process. I mentioned that if you're changing one status to another, you're setting a DNA plan and you're removing. So you've done the appraisal, so we're going to change it to status appraised. And generally the first thing you do when you're changing a status is you go into your task and you look at what DNA plan is already set. Now the potential appraisal plan is no longer relevant to you. So you can filter to that plan. You can select all of the items that haven't been completed and you can delete them. You don't need to do them anymore because you've done the appraisal. When you've completed an appraisal, in the life cycle appraisal information, you'll set your date and time you did that appraisal. I'm going to pretend I did that this morning, and you'll fill in your appraisal information. As long as you have your date and time of your appraisal, you can then actions apply your appraisal follow-up and hit apply. That will then set all of the emails, SMSs, phone calls, reoccurring items to contact them every year using our standard plans. So if you take that into your planning, that every time you change the status or something happens with the property and you want to use a plan, the general rule of thumb is before you set a plan, check what plan is attached. If it's no longer relevant, then remove it. Here's another good example. If I lost this appraisal, I don't want to keep sending them emails or calling them saying, hey, you ready to sell? I filter to the plan, which it's only got the one on there, so it's just showing all these items, and we can delete all of those plan items. I would then go into actions, apply DNA, and set my lost appraisal. If I won that appraisal and I listed it, I would then set the listing one and change the status to listed. So keep that in mind. For now, you have to, before you go in and change the status or set another plan, remember to check your tasks, remove any uncompleted tasks that are no longer relevant. So going through that whole cycle, we give you really good follow-up to get from a potential to an appraisal, to win that appraisal, to a listing, all the things you should be doing when you list it, when it's on the market, to everything that happens when the property goes sold, for all your vendor, solicitors, follow-up and purchaser follow-up. And then the anniversary process is all done through a transfer button that we will show you in the tutorial. So when you get to the point of a property settling, you'll use the transfer button and it will give you all the actions to transfer to the new purchaser and set the plan. But you'll see that in our YouTube training. Okay, now on a final note here with your properties, let's just look at why it's of great benefit to you to start putting your properties in, potential sellers, and databasing the properties they own correctly. Here is one of the greatest return on investments you will ever get out of any CRM. Whether it's locked on or not, you've got to make sure it's easy to find data that is of high value for you to contact around every sale. So in my properties database, if I've sold a property in Malua Street or in a suburb, Doles Point, I know that communicating with the people I know that I've databased, that I've appraised or sold to, is of the highest value of conversion for me. If I look at my database and say, okay, well, in the property details search, I just sold a property in the street name Malua, and I want to find all of the ones I have as potential or appraised and hit apply. In that particular street, I have 6 properties that I've appraised or sold to. These are by far the greatest phone calls you can make around any sale. Now, my database is small. When we're dealing with some agents and they sell a property in a street and they've got 600 potential sellers, they're ringing that street as soon as a sold sign goes up and they've got 10 past appraisals in it. They've got 5 people who have purchased in that street. They ring the next street after that, and they're making 20 to 30 of the highest conversion calls they can around a property that has just sold that day. The sold sign's just gone up. Everyone's driving home and seeing it, and they've already know what it's sold for. So with these 6 people, I can go actions, create hit list, and I turn LockedOn into a telemarketing machine, and I go into the first call. I have all of my vendor details, contact numbers, any summary or notes I've done with their property. I can look at their appraisal that I completed and how I appraised it for. I can call them, update any information, tell them about the sale, see if they're thinking of selling, move on to the next call. Again, read over all the details, got their contact number, next call, next call, next call. And within 15, 20 minutes, I've called the whole street of the most important people I can, which are people I've appraised or sold to, letting them know of a just sold result. Now, on top of that, if your data's in there beautifully and neat, you can do things like, well, I have a large area in my suburb, Doles Point. I want to search the whole area. I just had a record sale, so we're going to search Doles Point. and we might just look for my appraisals, and we hit apply. I've got 4, pretend it's 400. I'm now going to say send SMS, and I'm going to let them all know that I had a property just sold for a record price. We can use a template, just sold, and we can then specify what that sale was. 14 Malua, and it will then merge in the details of the property, the sale price, and my details, and I hit send. So you can see the benefit of having really good potential sellers and good, clean property data. It's really where you get all the value. Is just sold marketing becomes your highest conversion. Any calls you can make, conversion by far, and it becomes very easy to have chats with people that you already know, that you've appraised, and you're giving them valuable information. So that is the tail end of why CRMs are important, because of that such high conversion around people that you already know are thinking of selling and giving them valuable information. So guys, hopefully you've seen a fair bit of the core components of LockedOn and also see launching triggers today. But before we finish up, we'll just open up to the last minute or so of questions to see around the properties, potential sellers and the DNA plans there, and see if we've got any questions around that. And then we will finish the recording, get this up on YouTube and send it around to everyone who's registered. So if you have a question, let's get the last minute or so on those, send them through, chat, question, and we will go from there. Okay, looks like we've got a chat here. Okay, where do we see what is contained within the DNA plans? Okay, so all your DNA plans are installed in the engine, and in the DNA area here, you'll have all of the plans that you can click in and see every item inside of them. Okay, it will specify if it's an email, if it's an SMS, all of those emails and SMSs are inside your engine in the templates area as well. So you can see them, modify them, edit them, but this is all of the actions inside of your DNA plans will be in the engine DNA area. Sometimes takes a while for the DNA plan to load, but you can see here is the DNA plan and what it's actually doing. So they're very powerful, got a lot of rules and conditions in them, but that's where all of your DNA plans are located. Okay, well guys, it's been a pleasure showing you around LockedOn with this monthly webinar. You can always watch a recording of this by going to the main screen in the training and hitting the watch previous button. That will take you to our YouTube channel with all of our training movies, and always the last webinars at the top of the screen there for you to watch. If you also want to register for the webinars that we do first Wednesday of every month at 2 p.m, you can register for as many as you want, hit the register option, simply fill in your details and you'll be booked in for the next webinar to happen, and you'll get alerts of when that's coming up. It's been great speaking to you all today. If you have any further questions or would like to know more about anything that we've done, you can email support@lockedon.com, or you can use the chat button inside your account to chat to one of our support team. Have a great evening, guys, and I look forward to catching up with you all very soon. All the best.